The story of humanity's dawn is one we have been told 1,000 times. In the beginning, there was dust, a breath of divine life, and a man named Adam, wandering the pristine paradise of Eden. Then came the rib, the creation of Eve, and the fall of mankind. It is a neat, linear narrative that has shaped empires, moralities, and the foundation of Western civilization. But what if the first chapter of our history was heavily edited? What if, before the rib, before the serpent, and before the fall, there was another woman? A woman made not from the marrow of a man, but from the exact same dark, primordial earth. Her name has been whispered in shadows etched onto protective amulets and systematically scrubbed from the holy texts that billions revere today. This is the mystery of Lilith, the true first woman, and her story is the oldest cover-up in human history. To find her, we must look not at what the Bible says, but at what it fails to explain. If you open the book of Genesis, you will find a glaring, unresolved contradiction hidden in plain sight. In Genesis chapter 1, the text states clearly, "Male and female, he created them." This implies a simultaneous creation, two beings forged at the exact same moment, absolute equals in the eyes of their creator. Yet, just one chapter later, the story abruptly changes. Suddenly, Adam is alone. God realizes the man needs a helper, puts him to sleep, extracts a rib, and creates Eve. For centuries, biblical scholars brush this off as a mere repetition or a poetic shift in perspective. But dissenting voices, ancient scholars of the Torah, and modern historians realized the truth was far more unsettling. The two chapters are not a repetition. They are two different events. There was a first creation, and there was a first wife. The most explosive details of her existence do not survive in the canonical Bible, but in the fragmented, heavily guarded texts of ancient Jewish folklore. The alphabet of Sirach, a controversial text from the early Middle Ages, dared to put into words what the orthodoxy had tried to bury. According to this ancient manuscript, Lilith was created alongside Adam from the same soil and the same divine breath. But almost immediately, paradise became a battleground. When Adam demanded she lay beneath him, signaling her submission and his dominance, Lilith refused. She argued a simple, unassailable logic. They were made of the same earth, so they were equal. Adam would not yield. The tension in Eden reached a breaking point, culminating in a moment of unimaginable blasphemy. Lilith, realizing she would never be treated as an equal, spoke the true, ineffable name of God, a word of absolute power that no mortal was meant to utter. In an instant, she sprouted wings and tore through the skies. Abandoning the Garden of Eden forever, God dispatched 3 angels, Sinoi, Sansonoi, and Samangeloth, to hunt her down. They found her at the edge of the known world, by the shores of the Red Sea, in a desolate region teeming with demons. The angels delivered an ultimatum: return to Adam, avenge, or suffer a terrible curse where 100 of her children would die every day. Lilith chose the curse. She chose exile, darkness, and demonic offspring over a life of submission. This choice transformed her from the first woman into a terrifying monster of the night, a creature who would haunt the nightmares of parents for millennia to come. But the alphabet of Sirach was merely putting onto parchment a fear that was already thousands of years old. Lilith's roots go much deeper than medieval folklore. To find her true origin, we have to travel back to the cradle of civilization itself, to the sun-scorched plains of ancient Mesopotamia, long before the Hebrews wrote their scriptures. The Sumerians and Akkadians feared a class of female wind spirits known as the Lilitu. These were not the tragic heroines of modern feminist literature, they were night terrors. In the ancient Epic of Gilgamesh, dating back to 2100 BCE, a creature remarkably similar to Lilith makes her home in the trunk of a sacred hulapa tree, defying the hero Gilgamesh until she is forced to flee into the wilderness. Archaeology provides chilling, tangible proof of how deeply the ancient world feared her. In the 1930s, excavators in the ancient city of Nippur unearthed dozens of eerie, clay incantation bowls buried upside down beneath the thresholds of ruined homes. Dating to late antiquity, these bowls were inscribed with frantic, spiraling Aramaic spells meant to trap evil spirits. Over and over again, the name written in the center of the trap is Lilith. The spells beg for protection against the strangling mother, the demon who slips through the cracks of doors in the dead of night to steal the breath of sleeping infants and seduce men in their dreams. To the people living in these ancient cities, Lilith was not a myth. She was a very real, lethal threat. You could not see her, but you could hear her in the shrieking wind. And you could see her handiwork in the tragic, unexplained deaths of newborns in the crib. How did a figure so deeply embedded in the ancient psyche, so widely known across the Middle East, vanish from the most widely read book in the world? The erasure of Lilith was not an accident. It was a deliberate act of theological pruning. As the early patriarchs of the Abrahamic faiths consolidated their power, they needed a unified, patriarchal origin story. A first woman who defied man, argued with God, and possessed the power of the divine name was a dangerous concept. She represented rebellion, female autonomy, and a challenge to the divinely ordained hierarchy of the family. The scribes who compiled the Torah, and later the bishops who canonized the Christian Bible at councils like Nicaea, systematically cut away the messy, polytheistic, and threatening elements of older myths. Lilith was excised, leaving behind only the compliant, rib-born Eve. Yet, like a ghost haunting an old house, they couldn't scrub her completely. A singular, chilling trace of Lilith survives in the Standard Bible today, hiding in the book of Isaiah. In Isaiah 34:14, the prophet describes the utter destruction of the kingdom of Edom, painting a picture of a desolate wasteland inherited by wild beasts and monsters. In the original Hebrew, the text says, "There also the Lilith shall rest, and find for herself a place of repose." For centuries, English translators deliberately obscured this word. The King James Version changed her name to the Screech Owl. Other translations called her the Night Monster or the Night Creature. The translators knew exactly what the word meant, but they refused to legitimize her presence in the Holy Canon. The greatest archaeological discovery of the 20th century tore the veil off this cover-up. When Bedouin shepherds stumbled upon the Dead Sea Scrolls in the Qumran caves in 1947, they found the oldest surviving copies of biblical and extra-biblical texts. Hidden among these fragile, decaying fragments were the songs of the sage. a collection of ancient exorcism hymns used by a strict apocalyptic Jewish sect. There, clearly written in the ancient script, are incantations meant to protect the faithful from the terrifying influence of Lilith and her demonic brood. The scrolls proved that during the time of Jesus, the fear of Lilith was alive, well, and deeply integrated into the spiritual warfare of the desert mystics. The mystery of Lilith forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the texts we hold sacred. History is written by the victors, and in the theological battles of antiquity, the scribes won. They buried the first woman beneath layers of dogma, transforming a symbol of ultimate independence into a boogeyman used to frighten children and subjugate women. But suppression rarely works forever. In the late 20th century, the forgotten woman of Eden began to rise from the ashes of her historical exile. Unbound by the theological chains of the past, she has been reclaimed. Modern psychologists like Carl Jung saw her as the ultimate archetype of the suppressed shadow, the dark, untamed aspect of human nature that society tries to ignore. The story of Lilith is not just a tale of ancient demons or squabbles over Hebrew translations. It is the story of a fundamental human struggle between control and freedom. She is the piece of the puzzle that makes the whole picture make sense, the missing link between the egalitarian myths of the deep past and the patriarchal structures that followed. She was erased from the pages, but she survived in the margins, on the clay bowls buried under floorboards, and in the dark corners of the human mind. When we look back at the Garden of Eden now, the picture is forever changed. Behind the figure of Eve, standing just outside the gates of paradise, wings folded in the shadows of the wilderness, Lilith watches. She is the first exile, the ultimate rebel, and the woman who chose the darkness rather than bow. And as long as humanity continues to question the stories we are told, her name will never truly be forgotten.